My name is Wojciech Dobkowicz. I am Senior Product Manager in mAuthor in Learnetic company. Today, my presentation is about contents accessibility guidelines. So what are the current accessibility issues and how to deal with them, how to cope with those problems, and how to meet those guidelines in mAuthor. So first, let's think about why should we care about accessibility in the first place? The answer is very simple, actually, because there are people who need help, and we can provide that help. There are four main types of disabilities: visual, hearing, motor, and cognitive. If we look at the numbers, those values are actually in millions of people, and this data is from the United States alone. So if we look at the percentage of the overall population, we can see that there are actually a lot of people with those disabilities. So we shouldn't make them, left behind. So let's take one of those disabilities, the colorblindness. This is something that we are very familiar with and very used to on an everyday basis. But this is how it looks like for colorblind people. So we can take measures to overcome those problems. By creating accessible content, we can provide equal access and equal opportunity. Because web technologies that we are all familiar with and we are working with them every day, they provide us ways to overcome the barriers to print, audio, and visual media very easily, easier than other technologies. So, also one of the very important reasons and the importance of the accessibility is that there are law regulations that makes us to do so. Okay, so what is actually the WCAG? Web Content Accessibility Guidelines is a set of documents that explain how to make web content more accessible to people with disabilities. And we can we can see the web content as two layers, natural information and technical background that makes it work. So the one layer is text, images, and sounds. The other layer is a code or markup that defines the structure. This documentation, the WCAG, is divided into four main principles. The first is that the web content should be perceivable. So it means that we should provide alternatives for multimedia content. Next is operable. So all functionalities should be available, for example, for keyboard-only users. Understandable, which means that the content should be predictable and it should operate in predictable ways. And the last one is robust, which means that we have to maximize the compatibility with user agents other than traditional web browsers. So this includes assistive technologies like screen readers. And upon intensive and thorough analysis of the whole documentation, the WCAG documentation, we realized a very important thing, that the whole documentation is written in a form of guidelines. So they are not actually requirements. And when we realized that, this changed our mindset, because this meant that we could provide the accessibility in a way that is very convenient for us from the technological perspective. So actually the WCAG is what should be done and what should be adjusted in the content, and it doesn't specify exactly how it should be done. So this is, from our technological perspective, this is an advantage. So what should be adjusted? First of all, we have to use correct markup of headings. We have to add alternative texts for multimedia like audio and video. We have to add subtitles and audio descriptions to videos. We have to define the language of the lesson, but also of particular fragments of the lesson if they are in another language. We have to provide color contrast between the text and the backgrounds, and also in all other graphical elements. We have to also provide other means than color to inform the student, for example, the student about the correctness of activity or any other information. It shouldn't be only in color. We have to put the add-ons, meaning here the content, in a logical sequence. And the last one is we should provide also the screen reader. There's a text-to-speech add-on mentioned here. Of course, this is very mAuthor based, which I will show you later. For the last few years, we were working very hard in mAuthor to make those adjustments not only possible, but also easy to implement. So we have a proper HTML structure and markup where needed. We have tools to make those adjustments user-friendly for the editors. We have tools for the end user to make the content more accessible. So this is one of the examples, is the screen reader module. And we are also looking into the future. We are taking into consideration the next versions of this documentation. So now the mAuthor built-in tools. I will go through tools that they are already developed, and also the ones that we are also thinking about implementing in the future. So first, the very basic one, it's a heading module. Instead of using a simple text module to provide the title of the screen, we should actually use another module because of one of those requirements, use of correct markup of headings. So this will actually make that in the lesson, from the perspective of some kind of assistive technologies, the heading will be more easily recognizable. Then we have tools to add alternative texts. So for a number of modules, like choice, connection, and so on, in the mAuthor's editor, we can provide alternative text not only in the properties, but also for the fragment of the selected text. This is very basic when you're creating a new content from scratch. But what if you have ready-made lessons and you want to make them, so you want to adjust them to be accessible? So then we have also a set of tools that help you with that. On this animation, I'm showing tools that finds all the missing alternative texts. So here in the presentation menu, we open the WCAG, and it automatically displays a list of all the modules in our presentation that have those alternative texts missing. And we can easily click on those modules, and we are already redirected to them. The module is selected, and we can add this property. So of course, this is a very short demo lesson, and there isn't a lot of content. But in other examples, there would be dozens of modules here. The third point was to add subtitles and audio description to videos. So this is simply a screenshot of the video module where you can provide audio description. Not only we have this property for the video module, but also it works together with the text-to-speech module. So if you put a text-to-speech module on the same page, you don't have to link it or configure it in any special way, but it will automatically find the audio description data. It will pause the video, and it will read aloud the texts that are specified here. The audio description is basically text provided for blind or people with partial blindness that are unable to comprehend what is going on the video, on the moving images, and the audio description helps them to understand what is happening. So it's description of the actions that are taking place in the video, and when the description is red, then the video resumes. Another built-in tool is the definition of language. We have a way to define the language for the whole lesson. It's in the lesson's properties. So for the whole presentation, we can define the main language. For specific modules, we can define another language, and even for the fragments, the specific fragments of a given module, we can define another language. Of course, we don't have to define it in every place. We can define the language if it's only in one language. We can define it in the lesson's properties, and it will be sufficient. Colors and contrasts. This is something that couldn't be done automatically, or maybe it could, but it would be a very, very big development, because we have to check the colors manually. We actually have to measure what is the color value of given text, measure the value of the color value of the background, and have some tool to say if this meets the WCAG specification. Here are several examples of online tools that do that for us. And once you find out that, for example, in your content there is the contrast is not sufficient, it is too low, you can simply adjust it in the mAuthor in the template. So these are the examples of some lessons that we created, and we have the standard way shows the connection module, for example. The correct lines are in green, the incorrect are in red. But for colorblind people, this doesn't say anything. So we also have to provide graphical elements next to the items of the activity to indicate which are correct, which are wrong. And this can also be done in the mAuthor's template. So it requires some work on the CSS, so you have to implement those changes in the code. But of course, you can do it only in the template, and it propagates the change through to all your content. Another problem is the operable principle, and to provide way to navigate content only with using keyboard, so without the mouse. The problem with a fixed HTML structure and backward compatibility that I mentioned before is present. So the partial solution that we implemented was to add a tab index property, tab index attribute. So it basically tells the assistive technology like screen readers in which order the modules should be read and in which order it should understand the content. But the browser capabilities are low with highly interactive content, like for example the memo game. So we have to look for another solution, and we found that we have to simply make our own keyboard navigation. About text-to-speech, we have the same problems with the screen readers. The solution again was to have our own TTS module build, and it has been combined with the alternative text, keyboard navigation, and activity checking tools. So in our opinion, the built-in TTS module covers the WCAG requirements fully. Other tools to make implementation and the adjustments more easy for the editors is that we have an autofill option for the TTS module, for the text-to-speech module. So if you place a text-to-speech module on the page in the editor, I mean the ready-made page with a lot of content, with a lot of modules and activities and so on, you don't have to worry about filling that information into TTS module, because there is an autofill option, and also there is a sorting modules option, which addresses the requirement or the guideline to have the content ordered in a logical way. In mAuthor lessons, the content is presented in a fixed way. The modules are fixed, their position is fixed. So you have to keep in mind that this order on the list of modules is crucial when it comes to the TTS and keyboard navigation, because when I use the tab button on my keyboard, when I'm using only keyboard, the navigation will go through all the modules in the exact order that is presented. So the modules that are at the highest position on the page are at the bottom here. So we have also an extensive documentation page, and it is actually composed of many different sections in the mAuthor's documentation. So I encourage you to visit that. It is presented in a way that you can simply go through all the pages, and you will be able to make your content accessible. Okay, thank you. So this is everything from my presentation. Thank you.